Recording in progress.
Recording in progress. Hey, Tony.
Hello.
I can make it. All right, I'm gonna admit everyone. Hi, Rob, Aaron.
How you doing, cuz?
How you doing? I'm good. So, good. I figured I would spend about maybe 5 minutes just talking about Acacia, which features so prominently in this Parsha, and then just hand it over to you and make it separate. What do you think?
Yeah. If that's sounds good to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
What's the deal with the acacia? I'm very curious.
Well, I'm gonna tell you all about it.
Okay.
Can you see me if I do this? Am I still on camera?
You are still on camera.
Good. Okay, good. Okay. My kitty is playing with the tassel from the Stone edition. She loves it. Yeah.
Okay. Should we start?
Yeah. Sounds good to me. I'm game. Why don't I? Yeah, sounds good to me. But why don't we rather than I want to keep the Torah part separate because you probably how about that? Let's keep it separate. So before we do the blessing, I'll talk about Acacia.
Okay.
I think that's better. We should separate these things. Okay. So hello everyone and welcome to Parsha, and we're on what's the name of the Parsha today, Aaron?
Vayakhel.
Yeah. I can't find it for some reason all of a sudden. Oh, there we go. All right, finally. And yes, Vayakhel. And it's that's Exodus 35, 1 through 20, I think. And it's a very interesting thing. Aaron's going to talk, Aaron is going to talk a lot about it because, it's a lot about construction and some interesting things like that. But what you'll notice that is prominently featured is this particular wood that they seem to build almost everything out of, and this wood is shittim wood, which translates to acacia. Okay, so acacia, it's very revered in many different religious and magical traditions, and it has become a associated or an emblem of immortality and initiation, and in the sense of initiation as being symbolic of resurrection. Leah today, who works at University of Washington in the pathology department doing autopsies, works with funeral homes, and today, of course, she telephoned or had a discussion with the Acacia Funeral Home, because funeral homes and acacia, it's this relationship with acacia. So the ancient Egyptians, it started really with the ancient Egyptians. They made funeral wreaths of acacia leaves, and then the Hebrews planted sprigs of evergreen acacia to mark the graves of departed friends or dear departed loved ones. Acacia is this wood which we're going to talk about in the Bible. It's it's all over the place. It was the wood that was used to construct Noah's Ark and the tabernacle and the altar it was the wood. It was the burning bush was a bush of acacia, and that's all just in the Jewish tradition. In the Christian tradition, the acacia tree is linked with the construction of the cross itself. The spiny branches of acacia were used as Jesus's crown of thorns. And the sap of some spiny acacia species is actually where we get gum arabic, that binding agent that is like in everything that we eat all the time. So acacia, if you think about it, this wood that we put over people's graves, it's like we said, it's symbolic of resurrection, the dead, the other side. And to contact the dead, there are traditional Jewish methods and other methods, but one of which is to dip acacia leaves in holy water. This is a Christian method, right? In holy water, and sprinkle the altar with the water, or burn the acacia as incense to communicate with or memorialize the dead. That's in the Christian tradition. And in another tradition, acacia leaves are burned on charcoal to induce spiritual phenomenon and psychic powers. And that is said to be augmented by the use of frankincense and myrrh. And if I were me, and I am, I would also add in mugwort because into that mixture, because that is also known for inducing psychic visions. And the last thing that I will say is that acacia, when burned, it is found to be a natural, or DMT is found naturally in acacia, and DMT is an active psychedelic hallucinogenic ingredient. You can't really get it just enough of it, just by burning just an acacia forest down. It has to go through various processes, but it is interesting that all of those things about visions and death and the other side, and Jesus and Noah, and are all linked through this one particular botanical miracle, which takes up much of today's parsha. And now I will turn it over to my colleague and cousin and friend, Rav Aaron.
So Yirmiyahu, this
Yes.
is. Are you suggesting that because the Parsha talks about the construction of the temple, and the wood that's used is acacia? It's specified. It doesn't specify any other wood.
Right.
Perhaps that's the only wood that was available. I mean, it may not have any other significance than the fact that this is what was available, and so maybe moving forward, this is what we're going to do. This is how we constructed it, and this is how it's going to be. It
Absolutely.
could just be that.
Could be. It could be. It all could be truly unrelated.
There's an interesting story. I think it's about Yaakov and Lavan, and the sticks are acacia. That's the first time I think acacia is mentioned in the Torah, where Lavan is trying to cheat Yaakov out of a flock of sheep. And then Yaakov takes these acacia sticks and sometimes wraps them with something and causes stripes. And then this sheep reproduce because they see these acacia sticks with stripes on them or something. But there's some type of magic that's used there that Yaakov was aware of, and he uses the acacia there. And then someone else mentioned in the group, acacia is also the burning bush as well. So that's another instance where we see that. So it is unique where we see, at least there's a constant within the Torah where the acacia is associated with supernatural events. So prior to the building of the Mishkan, which is the holy temple, which we're going to discuss, or the mobile holy temple, we see acacia being utilized in one sense from Yaakov to create a spell or to conjure a result. Then also there's the vision that Moshe has where God is speaking to him through the acacia bush. And then finally, the ultimate edifice for God's presence on earth, the first edifice that's built, the temporary temple, is built with acacia as well. So there is this theme, this running theme throughout. So there's definitely something there. I don't know if they were. I know the psychonauts like to read into it and say, okay, they were munching on acacia the whole time.
Yeah, it's not enough. You have to really process it in a different way. But what is interesting? I mean, it is interesting. I mean, clearly it precedes the Hebrew. This association with death is from what I understand precedes, is in existence already when the Hebrew people comes into existence, right? So it's an already known thing, and then it's continued and propagated and used, and it may be because of its availability, right? I mean, we have, but there are definitely variously themed botanical elements that continue to show themselves in the Torah. Myrtle being one of them, right? Esther, who is Hadassah.
Right, and we discussed the olive. We discussed the olive plant. Right.
Exactly. And the cedar, the Lebanon cedar. And someone did mention that Dina's grave was supposedly marked with acacia. So there is this this otherworldly association, miraculous. Maybe the veil is thinnest. It's between God and it's like a radio antenna, to help you somehow. But it's the burning bush, man.
So are you aware of any pre-Jewish cultures that utilized acacia or where it had some significance?
Egyptian culture, yes. Egyptian culture, or which is also did it. So I think it's indigenous to that land.
So I want to talk about something like that, but I want to get to the bracha first. So what we're going to do is, so my name is Aharon Yosef Ben Mordechai. I am Rabbi Yirmiyahu's cousin, and he's asked me to go through the Parshiot. This is the weekly portion of the Torah that we read in an annual cycle. And before we started, for those of you who haven't been here before, I'm going to just kind of quickly summarize the whole concept behind the Torah and the Jewish concept of God. So Jews firstly believe that God is one. And when we say one, we mean like everything. I mean, everything, good, bad. And we mean that God transcends time. So past, present, future. And there's, it's not spatial. So this whole concept of God is like a universal force that is, has, and will always be. And so with that ever present, what we do is we believe that everything comes from that or extends from that, and that the Torah was an extension of that awesomeness, that oneness. So that divinity is then extended into the Torah, and the Torah becomes a book that we read to bring us closer to God and to understand God's ways. And as this is our first go round when we began discussing the Parsha, but I'm sure with the coming years, what we'll see is there are certain elements within the Parsha that certainly are, the way it's written, are beyond, I think, the knowledge of like an ordinary human being. I know that Yirmiyahu and I would differ on this sometimes, but I think that, in my opinion, there are certain non-coincidences, but things that are hidden within the Parsha itself, codes and things like that, that it would take a team of brilliant scientists to they couldn't even put something like this together, because it's something that you can read over and over and over again and find new hidden meanings in it. So before we study Torah, we always say a blessing to acknowledge its divine source. And so let's just quickly do that blessing together. Baruch atah Hashem, Elokeinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato, Baruch atah Hashem, noten Torah. Blessed are you, Hashem, King of the universe, who gave us the Torah. Blessed are you, Hashem, giver of the Torah. Now, we'll be using the term God and Hashem interchangeably. And the reason why we do that is Jews, when we refer to God, will refer to God as Hashem, which literally means the name. So we won't actually use the name of God unless we're referencing God in a liturgical sense, or in the service where we're reading the Torah. Actually, in a synagogue, we will use God's name. Now, the reason for that is because we don't want to confuse taking something that's everything and reducing it to a name. Because someone who might be simple-minded might start using that name and worshiping that name. And also the name itself, a limitation cannot express the true nature of something that is limitless. So we try and avoid that, and we'll just refer to God as the name to prevent us from misunderstanding God's true nature. So we're doing the Parsha Vayakhel, and this is the portion for this week. And the meaning of Vayakhel, it begins, Vayakhel Moshe et kol ha'adat b'nei Yisrael v'yom v'alachem ele hadarim asher tiva Hashem la'asot otam. Moshe caused the whole community of the children of Israel to assemble on the day after Yom Kippur, and he said to them, okay. So Vayakhel literally translates to assemble. So Moshe assembled. And so we always try and understand the meaning behind the name of the Parsha and why it's there. And this is coming on the heels of last week's Parsha, which is where Bnei Israel, the Jews, while they were in the wilderness, worshipped the golden calf. So they kind of got a distance from God. Moses then convinced God to not terminate his relationship with the Jewish people, but continue. And so this is an assembly. And what many commentators have viewed this as is the whole notion of assembly is where the individual, there's a tension between an individual and an individual's position versus a group, and that individual's membership in a group. And here we see that Moshe assembled all Bnei Israel, and what's about to happen is he's about to talk about building the Mishkan. The Mishkan is the mobile temple. So when the Jews eventually went into Israel and built in Jerusalem the temple, which can be seen today, there's actually a camera where you can tune in, and it's a 24-hour camera on the western wall, which is the remaining wall of the temple in Jerusalem. That is where the Holy Temple was built during the Jewish kingdom, when Jews inhabited Israel as a kingdom. And before then, before the temple was built, we had instructions on how to build a mobile temple, because the Jewish people really became, or the relationship between God and the Jews was consummated really in the last Parsha, in the last week's reading, where we see that God gave the Ten Commandments to the Jewish people. Then, after he gave the Ten Commandments to Jewish people, they violated this relationship by building the golden calf. And then there was like a reconciliation. And if you think about it, what's interesting is, now that I'm contemplating this even further. Is a relationship established based on only good times, or is a relationship really solidified when there's a conflict and when there's a resolution between the two parties in that relationship, and you see how that conflict is resolved? In my opinion, I think a true test in a relationship is one where there's a violation of trust, or there's some other issue that arises, a conflict that arises, and then the relationship is truly tested in that conflict, and one sees how loyal the other person is in terms of forgiveness and reconciliation, and how the two parties handle that. And I think, in my opinion, I think that's what really solidified the relationship between Bnei Israel and God. And I think that's a good example for us as well. When we're in relationships, we really don't know if that relationship is a good one for us until it's tested, and then you see whether or not that relationship has the strength to be able to move forward from. I don't know if you have any comment on that. No?
Me?
Nothing? Yeah.
No, I got nothing. I
All
only
right.
know about Acacia.
Okay. So anyway, so Moshe assembles the Jewish people, and what we see is what we see here is that there's a quality. Vayakhel, the assembling, represents a quality in our divine service, because one merges their individuality with the whole. And so while an individual can go ahead and achieve what an individual can, but collectively, together, when we all put our hands together, we can achieve something greater. And
This
so I
is
think,
like a minion. This is, this is what the power of community, right?
yes.
This is the power of community. This is the power of the minion. This is what terrifies. This is the assembly of the righteous is what drives away, the evil. This is important.
And I think, what's happening here is, before the instruction how to build this edifice, this temple where God's Spirit will dwell on earth, Moshe is bringing all the Jewish people together so they can all experience this instruction. Now, not everyone will participate. Not everyone can build the temple, but everyone will contribute in their own way towards this greater purpose. And I think that's what is kind of being taught here, is that as an individual, you have a greater power amongst others when you combine those forces. Now, it said the commentators say that this happened the day after Yom Kippur, and what's interesting is the day after Yom Kippur.
Yom Kippur, you have to mention Yom Kippur is the Day of Atonement. Yeah.
And so what that means is, there's a Jewish holiday where we fast for 25 hours and we pray. And after that holiday, we say certain prayers to absolve ourselves of the sins that we've committed during that year. And so your slate is wiped clean. So this is after the slate has been wiped clean, especially from the sin of building an idol, the golden calf, and worshiping the calf.
Yeah,
Moshe,
the ultimate symbol of purification, right? That's why it would start the day after, which would be the white crane. See, what you've done is you've created a pure. That is a purification ritual, right? It's a purging ritual, the fasting, ritual, and this is the same sort of rituals that we see preceding lots of in the Hekaloth literature, to try to fuse with the divine, right? So this makes perfect sense that you'd start on the day when everyone is cleansed.
Sure.
Yeah.
Ramadan is coming up, and for Muslims, yep. Ramadan and fasting it's a very important month, and they believe that fasting for that month is also cleansing them of their sins and giving them a new start. So what we see here is there's the cleansing, and now Moshe is going to instruct how to build a temple. Now, it's interesting that the way that the Jews are atoning for their sin of building a golden calf is to now build a different thing and build a temple for God. So it's interesting that it's coming on the heels of that. And so one of the ways, and I think I talked about this last week, the Parsha went into it instructed us on a model that we can use in our personal lives to ask for forgiveness when we've transgressed against our fellow person and hurt them. One of the things that we can do if we've transgressed against another person is then faced with the same situation, we now don't do the same thing. So in this case, Bnei Israel is not building an idol, but instead they're using the same faculty or the same willpower to actually do something better and to do it the right way. And so what we do is that again, that's a good test in terms of when you're faced with that same situation. Are you going to fall? Are you going to stumble? Are you going to slip? Or are you going to improve and learn from that past experience?
Yeah, certainly it's a reminder that your skills are transferable for good or for evil.
Exactly.
Right? Yes,
exactly.
Absolutely. Sure.
So it begins with a reiteration of Shabbat. And Moshe tells all of Bnei Israel, for 6 days work may be done, but the seventh day shall be holy for you, a day of complete rest to God.
Yeah, knock
And
it
you shall
off.
not, whoever shall do work shall be put to death, and you shall not kindle fire in any of your dwelling places on Shabbat. So this has been already mentioned several times over about Shabbat. And so what the sages teach us is when something is repeated, there's in the Torah, there's a significance to it. In there are volumes that are written on just the significance of Shabbat. But one of them, this now is juxtaposed against the building of the temple. So the question becomes, okay, well, what's the relationship between the building of the temple and Shabbat? We discussed that on the last Parsha too, because the last Parsha, or is it the Parsha before, relates to some of the building of the
both do.
Parsha Truma.
Yeah.
It deals with the building of some of the things that are going to be used in the temple. And so what's in the juxtaposition? One of the things we discussed last week or the week before was that Shabbat, Jews don't perform work on Shabbat. And the way you define what work is what was used to build the temple and maintain the temple. So that is what you don't do during Shabbat. So again, we're getting an instruction on what Shabbat is and what not to do, juxtaposed against the temple. Did I make that clear? Was that understandable?
Yeah. But I think people need to know also. I mean, that's what we use as the basis, right? And over time, right, technology has changed, right? And so they use this as an outline, and then the Shulchan Aruch, other codification of laws. Like people said, well, this is a new thing. This calculator thing with electricity.
This car.
This car. Like, are we allowed to drive it? I mean, these new spaceships, are they good? I mean, it wasn't around back then. So we've come. We've made these determinations have continued to evolve, but this is the basis from where we derive them. How's that?
Right. Yes, that's perfect. For instance, the relationship between not driving a car and not kindling a fire is a combustion engine. When you turn over a car and you're driving it, the combustion engine is actually creating little sparks and flames.
The creation of a spark is not allowed. Anything that creates a spark.
And gasoline is burning. So there's like a small fire that's happening within the combustion engine.
But you can start a fire though. Now, let me ask you this. I mean, Parsha says interrupt us. this it presents a problem for, and I've always wondered this for cooking. Of course, on the Sabbath, right? So you have to cook your meal right before sundown, and then you can go nosh on whatever you've cooked. You can't be like cooking in the middle of
Yeah.
Shabbat, right?
Yeah.
And
Nice.
and I know that this plays into Passover about when you can mix your ingredients and things like that. Um, but and so you can't like heat it up in the microwave, and you're not allowed to kindle wood. But what if the wood is already on? You can leave it on, right? If it's already
Yeah.
on, you can leave it on.
So in modern times, there's something called a blach. Okay,
Blach.
it's called a blach. A blach, and a blach is a sheet metal that's on top of a stove, and the stove is turned on a low setting.
Mm-hmm.
So you're allowed to place the food on the blach to warm it up. You can't cook it. You're allowed to warm it up, but not cook it. On a Yom Tov, which is a type of holiday, certain Yom Tovim, you can actually cook, and you can kindle a fire from a pre-existing fire. But for purposes of Shabbat, you have to have the flame there already, and you cannot actually perform the act of cooking. So you can't take an egg and fry it. You have to cook the egg ahead of time. Then you can put the egg on a plate that would then warm the egg so you can eat the egg as it's warmed, but you're not cooking it.
Right.
So that's why
add salt, you should only use certain fingers to do that too. But we're pretty meticulous people.
it's like, and that's where the OCD comes from, right? It's like, incidentally, the Shulchan Aruch, I don't know if you know this. I remember when I was first going through it, the Shulchan Aruch actually gives instructions on how to cut your nails.
I told everybody last week. Yeah.
Which fingers need to be cut first in an order. You skip every other finger, and then you go back, and then you do the and who knows where that came from. Everything has some spiritual dimension. At some point, someone interpreted the need to cut your fingers nails in a certain order, and there was a divine order. So Moshe then begins, once we establish Shabbat, he assembles everyone, he talks about Shabbat, and he then says, okay, this is the thing that God has commanded me to say to you. Collect among yourselves the contribution offering for God. And this is something that's really important. We see this a lot in the Torah. Every person whose heart inspires them. So there is this notion of a heart, an intention coming from a heart. And what Moshe instructs the Jews is he says, gather up your textiles, gather up your jewels and your gold, and make a contribution toward building this temple. Anything to your heart's desire. Now, it should be noted that the Torah also talks about the soul, the heart, and the mind. So, in prayer, when we pray, we also reference these things separately. And each one, your mind has a separate intention than your heart can actually generate. The same thing with your soul. And so it's something that's recognized here, and oftentimes it's something that we should understand when we're giving charity. We shouldn't be giving charity from like an intellectual standpoint that this is like the right thing to do, but give charity from your heart. And charity can come in different forms. It doesn't have to come in necessarily like a monetary donation, but a smile, a kind word, visiting the sick. I mean, these are all things that from our heart goes out to other people. Our heart goes out to the poor. And now our heart is going to building this temple. And so then there's some very, very specific instructions on how to put it together. And Rabbi Yirmiyahu spoke about the shittim, which are the wood that comprise the framing for it. And it's basically a tent. It's a tent that could be put up and taken down, and God would dwell in there, and that's where the service would be.
Yeah, this is like portable. This is like a portable little action.
Yeah. And so it continues here. Every person whose heart inspired them came. Everyone whose generous spirit inspired them brought a contribution for God. Now, so the Torah again is distinguishing spirit from heart. And the men came together with the women next to them. So this is a collective thing. Everyone whose heart inspired them to generously brought bracelets, earrings, rings, and body ornaments.
Yeah, nose rings. I like that because, a lot of people fight. I've heard a lot of fighting among Jews as to whether or not, earrings and nose rings are allowed. And, clearly.
Clearly there were, that would be earrings, and that certainly would be rings. Body ornaments, I don't know if that's referring to a nose ring. I know that there's symbols of nose rings. So the way a nose ring was worn might have indicated servitude. And the way an earring, the way an earring was also worn would indicate servitude as well. But what's nice here is we're seeing again a juxtaposition of the story of the golden calf, where the Erev Rav and some of the Jews came forward and gave exactly like this: their bracelets, their earrings, their rings, their body ornaments. And now what they're doing, you see like this fulfillment of atonement afterwards, where they're giving the same types of things and jewelry over for the temple. Now here's the question, and I should ask my rabbi this. And I think I know what he's going to say.
Okay, what am I going to say?
So if Bnei Israel gave all their jewelry already to the golden calf, and then the golden calf was destroyed, and they
got melted. Where did they get this gold from?
Where'd they get this stuff from? What's the answer? What's the answer? I got the answer for you.
You got the answer for me?
Yeah.
I think because they didn't all contribute. Some of them were holdouts. Yeah.
Exactly. And and that's what we learned last Parsha. Not all the Jews went forward with this movement with the golden calf. There was a group of Jews, the Erev Rav, who converted as they were leaving Egypt. They were actually Egyptians who saw the miracles, and they decided to convert. And they were kind of troublemakers. We'll see in the Torah every now and then they just cause trouble, and they incite dissension among the Jews. And so some of the Jews participated, but the Erev Rav certainly did. And so there are many other Jews, and the women did not participate in the golden calf. So there still was jewelry and other things that could be contributed to that. Now, I want to talk about the Erev Rav for a second. So what do you think the Erev Rav would represent within us?
You said Erev Ra or Rav?
Erev Rav. The Erev Rav were those who
the shit starters.
Yeah.
What you're saying is those are the people who were sort of just disingenuous in their belief systems, because what they did was they saw the miracles, and they were like, I want to be with that group, and not genuinely acting from their heart, which is what you just talked about, right? Is that what you're saying? About these people?
Yeah, it could be just joining a group because you think there'll be more favorable treatment, right? There'll be more favorable treatment for you.
Yeah, and that symbolizes. I mean, we have that in society today, where there's a lot of people who join groups because it empowers them, right? And you see that still today, right? So we don't have to get too political.
No, but it's interesting that the Torah is showing us that at work, when there's a group, a large group, there will be these people in the group who will try and join, who are joining not for the purposes of like a desire to be part of the group, but because they want to kind of hang on and reap the benefit maybe of that.
Well, right.
So,
You have people who are like, a lot of people make this comparison today where you have, say, women who do not support feminism because they achieve their power, okay, on the social scale through their man who is higher on the social scale, and therefore they don't want that tampered with, right? And so there's always going to be people who are self-interested in a very opaque way, right? They're thinking 3 steps ahead as opposed to they're more Machiavellian about it.
yeah, and you know what? It's interesting. I think they're so cool that we're talking about this because this parsha begins with an assembly, right? And so the whole purpose that the commentators
unite them
is a unification where the individual becomes part of a whole and becomes a greater force. Now, the Erev Rav, right? If it was just one person, right? If it was just one person who is a dissenter, they may not have a voice and everyone could just easily dismiss him. But together, the Erev Rav were a force that caused the golden calf to actually be built. So we have to remember that too, that the assembly of many can be used for good purposes and then can also cause bad.
Well, it's like the internet. There are trolls. If you provide a forum, there's always going to be a group of shit starters.
Yeah.
Am I allowed to say that during Torah study? Sorry, I hope not.
A friend of mine who tuned in, who was accustomed to a different type of Bible study, heard you curse the first time. I was like, what? What's going on in this Torah study here? Yeah.
I hope I didn't.
Right.
I hope.
Well,
Well,
you were talking about Shittim before, so and that's the acacia wood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Has he read the Torah with all the horrible things that happen in it?
Yeah. Right.
I mean, the rape of Dinah. Like, come on.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, I know that comes to mind. And then the incest. Don't forget the incest.
Yeah. Well, how about the horse ejaculations?
Yeah, there's a lot of no bestiality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, can I actually, you asked a question since you just mentioned the word acacia, and you did ask a question earlier, which I realized I know the answer to, but I didn't at the time. And the question about acacia was you asked about it whether or not it preceded the Jews, and I said it was the Egyptians.
Yes.
So I did a little bit more. I looked into my brain a little bit more, and so the Egyptian times like is 3100 BCE to 332 BCE. Okay, so Abraham is marching around like 1850 BC, and the kingdom of Judea starts around 1250 BCE. Okay, so
it actually, Yirmiyahu, it actually could be older than that. I mean, there's some people who theorize it could be even older. So just
true, but the Egyptians, let's say it could be older, but let's just say they're I think for the most part, the Egyptian culture precedes the Hebrew culture for about 1,000 years, almost 1,000 years. And that is acacia had already been established in Egyptian culture as and mythology by the time the Hebrews came around, because what it's used for, it is used in their rituals of mummification, which is why it was associated with immortality and rebirth and regeneration, and that makes a lot of sense. The Egyptians believed that the acacia tree represented the tree of their version of the tree of life, and that it held the key to eternal life. And that was because the tree itself has this ability to regenerate and thrive in the harsh desert climate after periods of drought, kind of like the resurrection plant, the Jericho rose, right? So it was as a tree, it was also seen as this never-ending cycle of life, death, rebirth, because it comes back up. And then, like I said, the resin was used by the Egyptians for in the embalming process. So it already was associated with the dead and the afterlife, by the time we walked around. And I think we might have, picked that up.
Right.
We're in the same area, Yeah.
Well, like I said, again, I mean, the first interaction with the Egyptians, I think, is where Abraham and Sarah, they're journeying, and there's a run-in with the Egyptians, and
Yes,
so
because the Egyptians are already established.
yeah, they're already established. And then when Joseph, the story of Joseph, he goes to Egypt, and there's already an established kingdom there.
Right.
But then Yaakov and Lavan, the story about the staff, the shittim, so he's using acacia also. So, but I would imagine, like you're saying, there are these themes of sacred plants and images and animals that were probably pervasive within the region.
Right,
And that's why
they're transcultural. They're indigenous beliefs to that area.
And that's why we talked about, the golden calf. Why was it a calf? And why was it not something else? Well, the cow or the bull was a symbol for Baal, which was a god that was worshipped there. So, and so that was, in part, it was the Erev Rav then worshiping Baal and kind of thumbing their nose at God for that. And incidentally, I think I mentioned this last week, Baal, or the symbol of Baal, the bull was supposed to be for monetary success and plenty. Is supposed to symbolize that. So you'd pray to this god of plenty for success. And in front of Wall Street, there's a bull. There's a statue of a bull. So even now, when we're talking about certain themes that are pervasive within these regions, think about how this theme of the bull and Baal, and I'm unaware of anyone who's worshiping Baal now. Perhaps there are those.
Oh yeah, there are. Yeah, there are. Yes.
Well, what's that place in California where the all like the heads of state go and they worship Moloch?
Like the Bilderbergers and stuff.
Yeah.
The secrets of all
The
that.
secret, yeah. It's the Moloch out, right. And you can see what's I think who's that guy who just got sued. He's got his own television station and programming. He's got sued because he was saying that the massacre in the schools here in Newtown, Connecticut, didn't happen.
Gosh.
He snuck in there and he filmed some of the worshiping of the owl in like this ritual that all these heads of state and politicians do. So it's a pretty wild stuff. So anyway, so there's the bull in Wall Street. Hopefully that's helping those worshipers make their money there. So one thing, I don't know. So one thing that's important to point out, I think, before we wrap up is the appointment. Moshe says to the people, like, who's going to build this stuff, right? And Moshe says to the children of Israel, see that God has appointed Betzalel, son of Uri, the son of Hur, of the tribe of Yehuda, with the ability for all types of work, to do master weaving, to work with gold and silver, Bohemian Grove, exactly. Weaving, to work with gold, silver, and copper, with the craft of setting gems, and with the craft of wood, to do all kinds of skilled work. Then there's another person, Betzalel. Betzalel, God gave both him, Betzalel, who we just mentioned, and Oholiab, son of Achisamach, of the tribe of Dan, the ability to teach others. And he instilled within them the wisdom of the heart required to perform all the skills of a craftsman. And Betzalel and Oholiab should do all the work together with every wise-hearted man whom God has instilled wisdom. So what's interesting here is, like, why is the Torah talking about these two people? And what's so special about them? And why does the Torah make a mention of the tribes that they're from? And what the commentators say is Betzalel was from the tribe of Yehuda, and Oholiab was from the tribe of Dan. Now there was, as in when you get all groups of people together, there's a little pecking order or hierarchy. The tribe of Dan was a lower status tribe, because the tribe Dan, as a son of Yaakov, because all the tribes are the sons of Yaakov, Dan was born to one of Yaakov's concubines, whereas Yehuda was born to one of Yaakov's wives. So you have someone who's from a high status tribe and someone from a low status tribe, and they're doing the same work together. So what is the Torah trying to teach us here? It's trying to teach us that those divisions of high status, low status are just, those are labels, and we need to transcend any type of artificial hierarchies that we have that we've set upon each other, because together we can accomplish more. And it doesn't matter where you come from, it matters where your heart is. And the Torah goes on to say they have the wisdom of the heart. So whether or not you're poor, whether or not you're rich, whether or not you come from what someone might view as a low status or high status, it's your heart, and the wisdom of your heart transcends any kind of societal label that might be placed on you. And I think this really important, because the Torah talks about that and then goes into the construction. So with that in mind, whether or not you're poor or rich, again, you together, you can construct an edifice for God. And as we've mentioned before, what the significance of the Mishkan is, this portable tent that's moving around, is this is what we build for ourselves within our heart, this place for God that we take with us wherever we go. And it generates the love in our heart, generates this. And then it becomes, our bodies become a place where God dwells. And then we too can transfer that to other people, that love in our hearts, and make the whole world a wonderful dwelling place for God. And so I just want to say thank you for the opportunity. And if anyone has any questions or comments, I would invite that. No?
All right. Well, what you know,
All right.
in the following book club, we're going to be talking about the concept of the soul, and so which you mentioned earlier about heart, mind, and soul, and that they are mentioned as three distinct entities, or I don't know, nodes, classifications, whatever you want to call it. Thank you.
Yes, it's my pleasure. And we are almost at the end of Exodus, and we're going to get into Leviticus, which is going to be really interesting here. And I look forward to being able to learn with everyone about that. It's a very difficult book to get through, and I really look forward to it.
Why do you think it's so difficult? What makes it so difficult?
It doesn't have the stories that we've talked about. So the Torah starts out really strong with stories, with human type of stories, conflicts within families and resolutions. And what we're going to start to talk about are more about like rules and
Rules.
and
Yeah,
laws.
the laws. Yeah.
And so it's important, though, it's not just halting there and its rules and laws, but we're going to learn how these rules and laws affect our very essence here on Earth and in our interpersonal relationships. So everything has a symbol and everything represents something else, and we're going to look for those deeper meanings. So when we see a tent, a mishkan, a tent that's a dwelling place for God, we're going to look at that and we're going to say, what does this meaning have for us now? Well, we bring up our bodies with us, are that dwelling place. We're the mobile temple here, and we can worship God, and we are all holy, and we all have that holy essence in us. And the acacia wood, that is the foundation, that's our skeleton right there. So, all right,
Thank
everybody,
you so much.
Shalom, and I hope that we can all pray, and this learning was for there to be peace in the world, and kindness, and God willing, in the coming days we'll see peace in the Middle East. All right,
And
love you all. Okay, until next week.
bye-bye.
Take care.